the mid-year budget was presented at the meeting, you seemed like you were expressing some reservations about how the reduction would actually be applied to the next year, the budget for the next year. Could you explain your thoughts on what was presented at the meeting?
Well, the budget was reduced by $1.1 million. I don't want credit unions to believe, and sometimes they get this thought in their mind, that there's going to be a check in the mail coming back to them for what they've paid. That's not going to happen. We're the federal government. Once we take the money, we never give it back. That's just the way it works. But what we're saying is we're going to take this $1.1 million that you gave us to use this year, and we're going to use it next year. And we're going to deduct it from what our total budget is next year, so you won't have to pay it again. You've already paid the $1.1 million that we're going to use in next year's budget. So you get a credit, but it's not like really getting a check back in the mail from Uncle Sam.
Well, we'll work very diligently this fall as we look on the annual budget. I think it was mentioned in the meeting that there was a number of requests for positions, some of which were extremely important, that we rejected as a mid-year adjustment because we didn't think they were as critical, although they deserve to be aired and maybe ones that we'll consider in November. But that's a process that deserves due diligence. We're very, very careful, and as you've noticed the last couple of years, about that budget to make sure that we have the tools necessary to meet our statutory responsibilities. But we take a fine-tooth comb to that, and we'll do that again in November.
What I'd like to see, of course, is to maintain the head level that we have at NCUA. I think we have sufficient employees now to operate very, very effectively. When I came on 6 years ago, the budgets had been cut repeatedly over time. We were left in a situation where we did not have enough examiners to adequately examine every credit union every year. Credit unions were being examined 24, 36 months between examinations, and that's totally unacceptable, and not a good regulator would not do that. And we don't do that at NCUA anymore. We have the examiners that we need to properly monitor credit unions to make sure that if there are going to be losses out there, we minimize those losses to the Share Insurance Fund. So that I'd like to see it kept at the same head level. Hopefully the board will look at the budget very carefully and see if there are any areas where there could be cost savings to credit unions. Again, credit unions pay for our entire budget through the Share Insurance Fund, our operating budget, everything we have out there. They need to know what it costs for their regulation. And I think going forward, the board will make sure that there is enough transparency so the credit unions understand what they're paying for.
Now, this meeting was expected to be the last one for board member Michael Friesel, and you mentioned a quote from Teddy Roosevelt at the meeting. What made you decide to use that quote to describe Mr. Friesel?
Well, it's the critic. It's about the man in the arena, withstanding critics to do what is necessary to be done, despite perhaps the unpopularity of the moment. And when board member Friesel came in as chairman in 2008, that's when the corporate crisis really hit hard. And he had to make tough decisions. And I was reading publications, including your publication, and some of the comments for people who felt, believe it or not, that there really was no crisis. He knew what the crisis was. He knew the impact on the credit union system and had to make decisive actions. It was not a popularity contest. He, of course, has proved to be correct. And the system that we have today with him and then following with the leadership of Chairman Matz, walking together to complete that journey, is why we have such a strong system. But at the time, there was a lot of criticism, and he had to do what he had to do. And I think that standing in the face of that, it's easy to criticize. It's more difficult to make the tough decisions, and he made those, and he deserves the credit for that.
The lessons I learned was that we needed to have in place the staff and the ability to make sure that what we were being told was actually happening at the corporates, and continually and taking that through to the credit unions as well. So it's always the old Ronald Reagan philosophy: trust but verify. And we have now the ability to verify everything that's going on out there, which in my mind is going to protect or keep from happening another corporate crisis that we have seen in 2008.
And last question for you, what can we expect to see from you after the NCUA board?
Well, hopefully I will still continue to be involved in the credit union industry in some way. I don't know exactly what at this point, but I will know better as we get towards the end of August as to exactly what that will be. And perhaps I can sit down with you and tell you what it is.